Alrighty, folks, it is 2 p.m. I'm going to check in with my moderator really quick. Alexis, I am not able to see if anyone is joined at this point. Are we good to go?
Yeah, you should be good to go. Unfortunately, we can't see how many people are actually in the session, but we'll assume they are all prompt and on time.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. If you are just joining us, welcome to the How to Apply to EPA Jobs workshop. My name is Camille Weber. I am the Recruitment and Outreach Coordinator in EPA Region 9. It is so good to be with all of you today. And part of the reason why I'm here is actually due to your advocacy. So in previous meetings, it has come to the attention of some of our EPA employees that more information in terms of helping tribal members get positions with the EPA is something that you folks needed. So that's the reason why I'm here today, to empower you and to give you knowledge about the federal hiring process, so that the next time you submit an application, even if it's outside of the EPA, that you're going into that application process feeling more confident than you did prior to this workshop. So let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, let's kind of go over the agenda today. We have a lot to cover. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about hiring authorities. If you're not familiar with hiring authorities, these are the different pathways that you can get into the federal government. And we'll talk more about specific hiring authorities and the ways in which you can use them to your advantage. Next, we're going to go into reading a USA job announcement. And we're very lucky today during the conference because we actually have 2 announcements that are currently open on the USA Jobs website. We're going to review one of those, and then at the very end of the presentation, after the do's and don'ts, we'll go over both of those open positions, so that if you're interested in those, you can bookmark them on the USA Jobs website and start your application. We'll also go into tips on how to write a federal resume. And spoiler alert, it's different than how you would write a standard resume. So hope you're going to learn a couple of things from that part of the presentation. We'll end with do's and don'ts, and then Q&A, we're going to put this in the chat feature. So I understand that all participants are muted and their cameras will be off during this presentation. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A as we go along in this presentation. And then at the end, last 10 minutes, we'll go over them together. So what kind of jobs could you expect to find at the EPA? So of course, we have environmental positions. So environmental engineers, physical scientists, life scientists, and environmental protection specialists. But in addition to those, we also have business and administrative positions and legal inspector general positions as well. So a lot of folks that I sometimes talk to think that with the Environmental Protection Agency, that folks wouldn't need to have a STEM background or environmental science background in order to work for us. And that definitely helps to qualify you for the majority of our positions. However, there are a lot of business and administrative and legal positions at the EPA that you could very well qualify for as well. So let's start by talking about these different hiring paths or hiring authorities. So why is it so important for you to understand different hiring authorities? What's the point of them? So this is actually pretty unique to the federal government. If you go on Indeed and you're applying for different jobs that are non-governmental, you're not going to see this system being used. But hiring authorities is something that you would need to understand if you're applying for any kind of federal agency, not just with the EPA, but other federal agencies as well. So why are they important? So let's take the example of, maybe you're very excited about joining the EPA, and you see that there is a position that is open to the public. So that means pretty much what it sounds like. It's open to anybody who wants to apply, right? So that means that your application and your competitive pool is huge for that position. And there are certain hiring authorities like recent graduates or Peace Corps and all the other hiring authorities where you're only competing against that group of candidates. So if there is a position that's only open to student and recent grads, you're only competing against students and recent grads. Same with Peace Corps. Now, on the USA Jobs website, they'll often pick one, two, maybe they'll have 5 different hiring authorities that that job is open to. But guess what? If that hiring authority that you qualify for isn't on there, you might be wasting your time applying for that job. So it's really important to know what hiring authority you qualify under and how to utilize different hiring authorities. And there are specific hiring authorities that actually give you kind of an advantage in the federal hiring process. First and foremost, there are veterans preference. And that's a hiring authority which allows you, if you are a veteran that is qualified for a position, if, again, they think that you are qualified for the position that you are applying to, your application kind of floats to the top of that, pile of applications that were submitted and deemed qualified. So the hiring manager gets to see your application first, interview you first, and possibly make a selection of you first. So you don't have to compete against all of the other folks that applied for that position. There's also Peace Corps and AmeriCorps Vista Hiring Authority. This is more for folks, maybe it's your plan after you graduate from college to join the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps and do that for a couple of years. If you come back, you can now apply for any type of opening that is open to Peace Corps and AmeriCorps Vista former volunteers. There's also hiring authorities for individuals with disabilities, students and recent graduates, and even one for Native Americans specifically. So one thing that's really important for hiring authorities is that in order to prove that you qualify for the hiring authority, you would need to submit documentation to prove that you fall within that hiring authority. So for example, students and recent grads, you're gonna have to submit your transcripts. For individuals with disabilities, you're going to have to submit a disability letter. And I actually want to highlight in this presentation today 3 hiring authorities that I think can really benefit folks if they understood, if they qualified for them, and how to actually apply to the USA Jobs website using that hiring authority. And the 3 that we're going to go through today are the Native American or Indians Preference Hiring Authority, students and recent graduates, and individuals with disabilities. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So Indians Preference, or the Native American Hiring Authority. With Indians Preference, you can receive preference over non-Indian applicants when applying to jobs with Indian Health Service and Indian Affairs. This includes the Bureaus of Indian Affairs, the Bureau of Indian Education, and some positions with the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. This hiring authority was made specifically for those federal agencies listed here. The reason why I'm sharing this hiring authority with you is because there's also a hiring authority that is open to current and former federal employees. So if you're able to find a job that you're really passionate about in the Bureau of Indian Affairs, for example, and you get a couple of years experience, after you become a career employee, which is usually 2 years in the federal service, then you can apply to vacancies that are open to current and former federal employees. And that's a way a lot of folks end up in the Environmental Protection Agency. So this is a great place to start your federal career if you qualify under Indians Preference. So in order to prove that you qualify under Indians Preference, you're going to need to submit the BIA form 4432. And if you're wondering, oh man, I'm not too sure where to find that information, if you go into the document section in this virtual booth, I've uploaded this presentation, and that is a hyperlink to the BIA form. So if you think you qualify under Indian's preference, then you can fill out that form and then submit that with your application to your next federal application that you submit. Next, we have Schedule A. So Schedule A is a hiring authority for individuals with disabilities. So what does Schedule A do? So Schedule A, it's an accepted service hiring authority that allows federal agencies to bring on candidates with disabilities without going through the competitive hiring process. So what does that mean? So let's start with the accepted service bit. So the accepted service is basically any type of position where there's some sort of caveat to employment. So an example of this with Schedule A is that if you were hired under this hiring authority, you have a 2-year probationary period. So this gives you the opportunity to kind of see if this is the right fit for you and what matches your professional needs. And it also gives the agency that same type of period to evaluate you and your fit in the agency. Another accepted service position would be students and recent graduates. So for students and recent graduates, there's usually a 1-year probationary period for recent graduates. And for student interns, if they're through the Pathways program, they'd have to complete a certain number of hours. So that's what accepted service means. It's just kind of a caveat to employment for that hiring authority. Now, what does it mean when it says without going through the competitive hiring process? So what would that mean for someone who qualifies under Schedule A? So if you qualify under Schedule A, what it means to not have to go through the competitive hiring process, it means that if you submit an application through the USA Jobs website for a Schedule A, for a position that is open to Schedule A, if you meet those qualifications, then your application can be seen by the hiring manager. And instead of you competing against all the other folks who also submitted their application and passed through qualifications, that hiring manager can just interview you and determine whether or not you're a good fit. And they can hire you without going through and competing against all the other folks who applied with you. So it's a really great opportunity if you utilize Schedule A. And there's also a couple of things to note if you want to utilize Schedule A. So if you want to be considered under Schedule A, there's going to be a couple of things to keep in mind. So first and foremost, you would have to submit a Schedule A letter. So this basically verifies if you're an individual with a disability that you have an intellectual, severe physical, or psychiatric disability. The Schedule A letter does not have to be specific about what your diagnosis or medical history is. It does not even have to include your need for accommodation. But there are 3 things that you should know about the Schedule A letter in terms of who can write it. So number 1, licensed medical professionals can write your Schedule A letter. So this could be your psychologist, it could be your family physician, audiologist. It could also be someone who is a licensed rehabilitation professional, and it could also be a federal, state level agency or entity that issues your benefits, like Social Security Administration. Either of these 3 different options can write your Schedule A letter, and that can qualify you under the Schedule A hiring authority. So one might be thinking, well, Schedule A sounds really great, but I don't think I qualify under Schedule A. I don't think I have a disability or impairment. And I'm here to share with you that this list is actually pretty expansive, and you might be surprised to see what constitutes as a disability or impairment under Schedule A. So we have different disabilities like developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities, traumatic brain injury, deaf or hard of hearing, However, we also have different disabilities as well, like psychiatric disorders or mental illnesses. So, if you are someone who is seeing a therapist and they have diagnosed you with anxiety or major depressive disorder, you could qualify under the Schedule A hiring authority. There's also other impairments that would qualify you under Schedule A. If you have a speech impairment, if you have morbid obesity, if you are HIV positive, you would qualify. Cardiovascular disease, heart disease. Again, with the different types of mental health disorders. There's also things like sickle cell anemia, diabetes. So a lot of these impairments and disabilities um, are not just the traditional disabilities that one might think of. It's actually a quite expansive list. Migraines is also on this list, and this list is not even done. I have one more slide of other impairments that would qualify. So if you are someone who is a cancer survivor, or if you're currently diagnosed with cancer, you qualify under Schedule A. If you have a learning disability, if you have ADD or ADHD, if you have autoimmune diseases like lupus, even if you have a history of alcoholism or drug addiction, the caveat being that you should not be currently using, but if you have a history of alcoholism and you've been treated, then you can qualify for Schedule A as well. So I encourage folks to keep this in mind as they are determining what hiring authority they may qualify for. And that Schedule A might be something that you may actually qualify for without previously knowing. And finally, the documentation. If you are thinking in this presentation, I might qualify for Schedule A. Please note that it's very important to get a Schedule A letter signed by one of those three groups of individuals that I listed in the previous slide. So medical professionals, folks who issue benefits, or a licensed rehabilitation counselor. And this is an example of what that could look like. This example, again, it's in the slide. So if you're wondering, well, this looks great, but I don't know how to give this to my medical professional if I am interested, there is a link that I put in this slide that will give you two different examples of Schedule A letters, one for mental health and one for more of like a physical health impairment or disability. But the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because in this example, there is no mentioning of the person's disability or need for accommodation. And that is something really important to note, is that if you want to apply for Schedule A, you do not have to disclose your medical information. The final hiring authority that I want to review with you folks today is the Student and Recent Graduate Hiring Authority. So in EPA Region 9, we call this the Pathways Program. So there are two different types of appointments under the Pathways Program. There's a Recent Graduate Pathways Program announcement, and those are for folks who have maybe just graduated from college or certification program, and they're looking to kind of start their federal careers. So again, this is open to students who have graduated within the previous 2 years. For qualified veterans, they extend it to 6 due to military service. And then we also have the student internship program. So this is designed to provide opportunities to explore federal careers. And in EPA Region 9, we actually offer a Pathways internship program that is a little bit unique. It is the indefinite internship program. And what this is really set to do is really make sure that we are supporting our interns while they are finishing up their programs and supplementing their academic programming with real hands-on experience with what it's like to work at the EPA. And if they complete an hour requirement and an academic requirement at the end of their educational journey, and they have favorable recommendation from us and the agency wants to pick them up, we can offer them a full-time job, and they can join us full-time with the agency. So that is another hiring authority where, if you're a recent graduate, it's within 2 years of graduation for most. And then student internships are for current students. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to reading an actual job announcement on the USA Jobs website. And I mentioned earlier in our presentation that we actually have 2 openings on the USA Jobs website. And I'm showing you folks one of those 2 that are open. This position is for an environmental protection specialist position in our Tribal and Intergovernmental Policy Division. This is open to recent graduates. So remember those hiring authorities we just went over? You're going to find information on these hiring authorities right here. And if this is the first time that you've entered a job announcement on the USA Jobs website, it is a pretty hefty read. There's a lot of information on here, which is a good thing, but it can also be really confusing, right? Because it might make you think, well, how do I start? What's the best place? Like, where do my eyes look to first? So most important thing, again, is to read the hiring authorities. So who is this job open to? So this job is open to recent graduates. So as I mentioned, recent graduates are for folks, typically for folks who have graduated within 2 years of the posting date. So from 2 years from October 19th. It's important to know that if you are looking for a position and you think, oh, wow, this is a really great fit for me, and it's not open to your group, you are wasting your time. Because again, they're only going to consider applicants that meet the qualifications for the hiring authorities. So start there, see if you qualify. And then I would go to the opening and closing dates. So something to keep in mind is that our openings are not for that long. Most jobs are only open 5 to 10 days. So it's really important that you know when the application date is due. Another thing that's helpful to look at is the pay scale and grade. So, a lot of folks, we want to know what the salary is. We want to know if it's a full-time position. And you might want to also start by reading the duties and responsibilities, because this will give you information about what exactly this position is going to do. And by the way, the 2 announcements that are on USA Jobs, they're both environmental protection specialist positions. However, if you read the responsibilities, they are not completely different, but they're very different. They are not the same. The work that they're going to be asking you to do is going to look a little different. So it's important to read the responsibilities section. So after you read the responsibilities section and you determine, wow, this looks like a really great position, the next thing that you would want to do is look at the requirements. These requirements have a qualification section. So if you're thinking, wow, this job is a really great fit for me, but I don't know if I actually qualify for this job, read the qualification section. This is really going to help you folks out. What I recommend to folks, especially if they're new to the USA Jobs platform, is go ahead and print out this entire job announcement and highlight all of the different qualifications that they're asking you to do. And also, if you're highlighting all of those qualifications, you got to put it in your federal resume. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. After you read the qualifications, it's good to also look at the required documentation. Again, the reason why it's really thorough, these are really long sections, is because the USA Jobs website is actually pretty good at putting all the information that you're going to need to know about applying to this job on the job announcement. So that's why it's pretty lengthy. But if you're thinking, well, gosh, I'm really lost, or maybe you forget all the information that I shared with you today, there is a point of contact on every single USA Jobs announcement. and there is a point of contact, and it's different for every job announcement. So it's not always Juanita Augustine for the job announcements, but this is a person that was assigned. So you can call, you can email this person if you have any questions. The one thing to note about contacting this HR person who's been assigned to this position or assigned to this announcement is that they are located in Cincinnati. So they're on Cincinnati time. So if you're thinking that you're going to call them after work and work ends at 5, you may want to call during your lunch break instead. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the presentation. And let's talk a little bit about how to write a federal resume. Okay, so a lot of folks think that maybe there's not a difference between a standard resume and a federal resume. And that is a really big myth. And I'm hopeful that in going through this section with you folks, that you feel a little bit more confident about applying for different federal jobs, because you'll have a really bomb resume that could help you. So federal resumes and standard resumes, again, are not the same. Standard resumes are typically 1 to 2 pages max, but most federal resumes are actually longer than that. They're typically 2 pages. And the reason for that, again, is remember when we were looking at the qualifications section, those qualifications, you're going to have to put on your resume how you meet every single one of those qualifications that they list on the USA Jobs job announcement. So you cannot assume that someone is going to qualify you based on information that they don't have. So that's why resumes in the federal government tend to be 2 pages or longer. But you do have resume options. You can save up to 5 different resumes on the USA Jobs platform. You can create your own resume using the resume builder in USA Jobs. And this is super helpful, especially if you're thinking, well, I'm not too sure if I'm really good at making my own resume. Maybe I need some help. This is a really good resource. And of course, if you feel really comfortable with the resume that you have, you can just upload your own, and you can mix and match with these different options too. So what should you put on your federal resume if it's so different than a standard resume? Well, it's going to be some things that are on your standard resume already, but you're probably going to add a couple of things as well. So first and foremost, you're going to start with all the jobs you've held and the dates that you were in each position. So what does that mean? Does that mean that if you worked at McDonald's or Taco Bell for a couple of years that you're going to put that on there? Yes, put that on there, especially if one of the experiences that you had at Taco Bell or at McDonald's is actually really applicable to the job that you're applying to. An example of this would be in a lot of positions at the EPA, we want you to have good customer service experience, right? Because we work with not just a lot of internal partners, but we work with a lot of external partners too. So it's really important that you can demonstrate your customer service skills. And if that's what you did at Taco Bell and what you did at McDonald's, we want to see that experience on your resume. You're also going to put your official job titles. And this is really important because I know a lot of folks sometimes have a lot of volunteer experience, and they were doing really specific jobs as volunteers. And maybe if you were coordinating a food bank effort in a volunteer organization, you would be really, maybe you would want to put that you were a coordinator. But the truth of the matter is, unless you were getting paid for it, you were a volunteer. So please make sure that you're putting your official job titles, and then you're free to describe what you were doing in the description section underneath that information. Again, you would also need to put in your detailed descriptions of what you were doing in each position, how many hours per week, and that's really important for us because a 16-hour-a-week job versus a 40-hour-a-week job, you're just going to have different experiences, and we want to see that. We want to have all your employers' names, detailed information about the skills and outcomes for each project, any tools, system, technology you are using, we want to see. Language skills. We want to see that you have language skills if you have them. A lot of the work that we do at the EPA is, of course, working with communities that have been historically disenfranchised. So it's really important to us, if you have a language skill, that you can share that with us. Of course, list of degrees or certificates that you have, scholarships, fellowships, internships, awards. If you took some training courses that you thought were super helpful, put that in there. Any kind of professional organizations, and educations and references are typically at the end. This is more of a kind of stylistic choice for folks, but if you choose to put it at the beginning, that's okay too, but we typically do see them at the end. The one thing that I think the federal government or the federal resume that makes it unique to standard resumes is it has a separate accomplishment section. This is very typical to see when you are seeing federal resumes. And it's really important that you have a separate accomplishment section. The reason being is that we want to see all of the different ways that not only are you qualified, but we want to see your leadership experiences as well. And I know a lot of folks sometimes have some trouble talking about their accomplishments. So that's why I kind of put this slide, and we're also going to go over an example of a really good accomplishment section. So you folks feel empowered to edit your resumes and really do focus on your accomplishments. So how do we do this? So first and foremost, you're going to talk about your responsibilities. Then you're going to talk about what did you initiate or implement? Did you get any results? Were there any outcomes that came from that implementation? You know, did you develop skills like supervising others or leading? Did you coordinate really well with others? Are you great at teaching or educating others? Maybe you have really bomb writing skills or presentation and public speaking skills. We want to learn all about that in your accomplishment section. And also, if you took on some extra work, if you took on some collateral duties that were outside of your duty description, we want to hear about that too. Those are all different ways that you can talk about your leadership skills. And we can all put that under one accomplishment section per position that you've worked. And, you know, we do like to see this because, again, we want to give you as much credit for your professional history as we possibly can. And we can't do that unless it's there. So here's an example of a federal resume. And one thing to note right off the bat is there are no bullet points. Oh no, what happened? So in the federal government, we see this is actually pretty typical. And the reason being is that, you know, in the when you are writing the different descriptions of the work that you've done, we want you to be thorough. And if you notice, the language in each of the lines that you see here in each of these type of paragraph formats, they're not that different than what's actually written on a standard resume. So it's actually pretty easy to go from a bullet point format to more of like a paragraph format. What's really great about this federal resume is that they're putting their hours that they work per week. They're putting what their official title was. They put how long they've been working in this position. And they've also broken down, again, this is just one position on their resume. So you can imagine why federal resumes tend to be a lot longer than standard resumes if this is just one position. But in this one position where he's talking about his experience as a security specialist, he's breaking down his roles and responsibilities, and he has a separate leadership and accomplishment section. This is really great. This is what we like to see. And again, this would give this applicant a lot of opportunity to talk about the ways in which he qualifies for the position that he's interested in. Now let's take a look at an accomplishment section. And if you're thinking, wow, this is a really long accomplishment section, I'm not too sure if I have that much under my belt to really give 2 or 3 paragraph worth. Do not worry. This is an example of an accomplishment section from a supervisor who has been working in the EPA for many, many years. So it makes sense that this accomplishment section is so long. If your accomplishment section is only 1, 2, 3 sentences long, that's okay too. Again, we just want to see that there's a separate accomplishment section for each position that you held. And you don't have to have an accomplishment section for each position, but it is kind of nice. The reason why I'm showing you this example is because this individual did a really good job of setting up their accomplishments so that the person reading the resume really understands why the accomplishment was important. So I'm going to direct you to the last paragraph, and I'm going to read it out loud to you folks. So in fiscal year 17, in partnership with an OGC attorney, we trained over 100 managers in the SFR on the AHAI program. Let's stop right here, right away. This individual is talking about who she collaborated with. What did she do? She trained 100 managers on the SFR on the AHAI program. This training provided a general overview of the AHAI program, provided legal information on the definition of harassment and retaliation, and provided information on the reporting requirements for harassment. As a direct result of these trainings, management reported 7 allegations of harassment that were initially ignored, which in turn helped protect the agency against potential litigation for ignoring alleged harassment. So this individual talked about what the training was used for. It was used to understand the reporting requirements for harassment and retaliation. And as a direct result of the training, the management of her organization was able to report 7 allegations of harassment that were initially ignored. So that meant that not only was she able to advocate for these folks who had submitted these who were victims of this harassment, this also was a good thing for her agency as well, because it means that that system that was meant to protect employees was actually working. So you can see here in this accomplishment section, this individual did a really good job of contextualizing what the problem was, who she worked with, and she also quantified her accomplishment. This is really great. So she talked about how management reported 7 allegations, that she worked with 100 managers. If you're able to quantify your accomplishments, that's a really stellar thing. But again, a really good example of a very strong accomplishment section. So let's get into the do's and the don'ts of applying for federal jobs. So first and foremost, what should you do? Read the entire job announcement. Make sure that you're looking at the closing date and the application acceptance information. Make sure you qualify. Wouldn't it be a bummer if you worked really hard on an application, but you don't actually qualify for the position you are applying for? Please make sure that you're printing out that entire job announcement. Highlight all the important information and try to put it in your resume. Speaking of resume, please make sure you're tailoring your resume. As I mentioned, as we were going through the USA Jobs announcement, the 2 positions that we have open, they're both environmental protection specialist positions, but they want completely different things in terms of their responsibilities for those positions. You're going to be working on different projects. So it's really going to be up to you to tailor your resume for each position that you apply to. Thirdly, prepare for a wait. For the federal government, it does take several weeks to be notified if you've been, if your application has been accepted and you've moved on to the next round of interviews. And just to be transparent, even if you are selected for a position and you are selected for the position that you qualify for, and you are set to join the EPA Region 9, it'll take a couple of months for you to get in as well because of security clearances and things like that. So please prepare for a wait. In addition, follow up. If you're having any trouble with your application or you just want to see the status, check with that contact HR person on the USA Jobs job announcement. And then there are a couple of things that you should not do. Please, please, please do not wait till the last minute. A lot of us will encounter system errors or issues uploading different documentation at the last minute, and it's always the time where you need it the most. So please do not wait till the last minute. Don't forget to submit necessary documentation. The best advice that I have to making sure that you upload your documentation on time is to start getting your documentation now. So if you think you qualify for a Schedule A announcement, get your Schedule A, work on getting your Schedule A letter now. Don't wait until that job announcement is up on USA Jobs. Try to do that now. Also, don't submit a general resume. Again, you have up to 5 resumes that you can upload on the USA Jobs website. Please try to utilize that function on the website. And then finally, don't assume that we know who you are. It's really up to you to communicate your knowledge, skills, and your abilities on your resume and in the rest of your application as well. So now that you've made it at the end of the presentation, I want to share with you 2 positions that are currently open on the USA Jobs website. Both of them are environmental protection specialists, but they are open to different hiring authorities, so different groups and populations. So this first one is in our Tribal and Intergovernmental Policy Division. This is for recent graduates. Okay, so this position is only open to folks who have graduated within 2 years of the application submission or will be receiving their certificate or qualifying degree within 9 months of the announcement closing date. The application deadline for this announcement is November 1st. So if you are interested, feel free to click on this presentation and find this slide, and you can click the hyperlink to get started. And then secondly, we have another environmental protection specialist. This is in our air and radiation division. And this one is open to individuals with disabilities and veterans, as well as folks who qualify under merit promotion, so current and former federal employees. And again, if you're interested in this position or you want to look more into it, I've hyperlinked the position in this PowerPoint. Feel free to get started if you are interested. And then I'm going to finally leave you with some helpful resources. We have the EPA career site, the USA Jobs EPA filter. So if you don't feel like typing Environmental Protection Agency every time you're on the website, you can put that on there, as well as the hiring tabs page on the OPM website. Okay. And that is it for me. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so I can answer some folks' questions. Moderator, Alexis, do you mind helping me with the chat? I'm not too sure if I'm...
No problem. So far, I only see 1 question. So if anyone else has questions, please enter them now. Lori wants to know if there's a special consideration for elders over 65.
That's a really good question. So in terms of hiring authorities, no, there's not a hiring authority specifically for individuals who are over 65. However, please consider that you might qualify for other hiring authorities as well. You might qualify if you have current or former federal experience under merit promotion, which is, again, for current or former federal employees. If you have a qualifying disability or impairment, you may qualify under Schedule A. So explore different hiring authorities. There's also a hiring authority for individuals who are married to service members. So you may qualify for that. So my best recommendation is to explore the hiring authorities, see what you best qualify for, and that might get you more opportunities for employment in the future.
Okay. And then we also had another question from Bridget. Can Schedule A eligible applicants apply to the recent graduates announcements too?
Yeah, so Schedule A applicants can apply to recent graduate announcements if they meet the qualifications for recent grads. So if they had graduated within 2 years or 6 years, if they're a veteran, they can apply, and that's great. And we like to see that as well. One thing that I will bring up, if you are an individual who is still in a college or university, ask your college or university career center about the workforce recruitment program. So the workforce recruitment program is a program through the Department of Labor, and different colleges and universities can basically work with students who may qualify under Schedule A, so individuals with disabilities, and they can submit their application to the WRP website, and that uploads like their resume, and it puts it in this database. And it means that all federal agencies like EPA Region 9, we can go into that database, and for 2 years, your resume will stay in that database. So I can look at that information, and if I think you're a really good fit, or maybe one of the hiring managers in our agency are interested in interviewing you, they can do that. So I hope that answers that question. And I hope I gave a couple more pieces of information about other avenues for folks who might qualify under those two different hiring authorities.
Yeah, I was also surprised how expansive the qualifications for the Schedule A eligibility are. There's lots of different ways to qualify for that.
Yeah.
And then we have a question from Sally. It says, can you sign up for job announcements?
So what I'm thinking you're asking, and Sally, please feel free to write in the chat some clarification, because I think I'm going to need a little bit more context to what you're asking. When you're saying, can you sign up for job announcements? I'm thinking that you're asking about notifications. So the USA Jobs website is the portal that you're going to search for and apply for all federal jobs. So it's not just the US EPA that uses this website, it's all federal agencies are going to be utilizing this website. So it can be really difficult to, consistently just type in Environmental Protection Agency, San Francisco, to every single, every time you want to look for a job. So you can actually filter your jobs, and you can also turn on notifications too. So if you are an individual who, that you maybe qualify under Schedule A, and you also qualify as a recent grad, you can turn on notifications for those particular announcements that are open to those hiring authorities. And you can also put in notifications for us too. So if you're really interested in working for the Environmental Protection Agency Region 9, you can put on notifications for that. And every single time a job announcement for our region gets posted, you're going to get a notification, and you get to choose what your notifications look like as well. So they can either be email notifications. I think there's a text option, but I would recommend the email one. But basically, it's so that you can stay in the loop.
Looks like she said she was looking for automatically receiving notifications. So,
oh, good.
Thumbs up.
Well, I'm glad I answered your question then.
And that was the last question that I see currently. So.
Okay. Well, one other thing that I will share with you folks, because since we have a little bit more time, I'm actually going to show you both of the different job announcements that we have open on the USA Jobs website, and do kind of like a side-by-side comparison. So you folks know that even though Environmental Protection Agency, even though we have two announcements out that are for environmental protection specialists, they're in two different divisions, and they're asking for two different types of responsibilities and qualifications. So this one is for the tribal. I'm going to pull up. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time quickly for you folks. So you'll notice here that it says environmental protection specialist. This might look familiar, but this position is, remember, in our air division, and it's open to different hiring authorities. Remember this one that we looked at a few moments ago? This one is only open to recent grads. This one is in our Tribal and Intergovernmental Policy Division. This one, it's the same position, but it's open to different hiring authorities, including individuals with disabilities. Again, the responsibility section is unique for each job announcement. So if you're looking, and I'll stop sharing now. So if you're looking at the job announcements and you're thinking, oh, they're the same position, I can just submit the same application, you would be wrong. So I really do encourage folks to try to create tailored resumes for each position that you're applying to. I hope that's helpful. I also see that my session time has ended. One thing that I'm going to leave you folks with, and Alexis, am I able to chat? Am I allowed to chat in the chat
You
and
can
put in?
chat in the chat all of you want. And also in the lounge section, there is a open jobs section. So if you guys want to go in there, you can continue having a discussion, message back and forth, or message directly, however you guys want to do that.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. And I'm going to go ahead and leave my EPA email in the chat. So if there's folks who maybe have questions that they think of after this session, you're more than welcome to send me an email and hopefully I can get that answer for you. But thanks so much, folks, for tuning in. Thank you, Alexis, the moderator, for helping out today. And I'll see
you for the great presentation.
More
Lots
than
of
welcome.
good information.
All right. Take care, folks.
Thank you.